Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we are going to be talking about the process of buying our house during a pandemic and also over the course of 2 different national lockdowns.
So all of this is based on our experiences only. Just because something was the rules then, it doesn't mean it's going to be the rules going forwards. And potentially when we enter different tier systems, it's going to be different in different parts of the country. This is just our experience.
Yeah, like the rules are changing all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully knowing what our experience was will give you some kind of insight into what the rules might be for
more
other
like
people going
just
forward.
what type of things to expect as well. Like it's not necessarily going to be the same, but hopefully it might prepare you a bit.
You just need to be flexible.
Yeah.
So
the first real thing to talk about here is finding the house itself and how different that is now. So a lot of estate agents now, their tours were a video tour. You could find it on their website and they had a video tour of the property. There are also some estate agents that were doing 3D tours where you could walk around the property as if you were there. You just weren't actually there. And we found these really good. I feel like we couldn't 100% decide off these, but we ruled a lot out because of these. But obviously they're very different. And not all estate agents were doing this, but from the ones that we looked at, it seemed to be about half the properties there was something like this for them. So it's definitely improving and getting to be more online.
So doing the video tour and the sort of 3D street view type thing doesn't completely replace physically going there and doing an in-person viewing, but it really helped us narrow down the list. We probably seriously looked at like 15 to 20 properties, and in person we only viewed 4.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of shows just how much you can get a feel for the house, the flat, the property, and obviously you can use Google Maps to see where it is, and get a feeling for it and remove the ones that aren't actually suitable before even going to view them.
Then the next thing to talk about is the actual in-person viewings. Like Joe just said, we only viewed 4 properties in person, and the rules changed even in between the time that we viewed the first 2 and the second 2. So the first 2 we viewed in the same weekend, and then the other 2 we viewed, it was around 3 weeks later that we viewed those. In property number 1, the first one we have viewed, we wore a mask, and the person showing us around didn't come in any of the same rooms with us, so they'd either stand in the hallway and wait or go through to the next room so we could get into the room. We only talked to them outside, so there's a balcony at that property, so we only actually stood and spoke to them outside. And we also weren't allowed to touch anything, no handles, no like windows, like nothing at all we weren't allowed to touch. Then the second property was the same weekend but a different estate agent, and we all wore masks again. We couldn't touch anything again, and it was the exact same size as the first one, literally the exact same. But in the larger rooms, we could stand there and talk to that estate agent. We didn't need to go outside. We could be in there. We'd all got a mask on. We were all 2 meters apart, and we could talk in there. And he was also okay with like testing the taps, testing the water, making sure the boiler worked and stuff like that. So it was pretty much the same rules for those 2, but it was slightly different.
So the other 2 viewings, the ones a few weeks later, they were both with the same estate agent, so the rules were the same. And the rules were, we wore a mask, the estate agent also wore his mask, and we also had to wear gloves. He actually stayed outside the properties while we went in, so he came, opened the door, allowed us to go inside, and then whenever we wanted to ask questions, we had to go back outside and talk to him. It was really good us wearing gloves because it meant that we could test the light switches and the taps and all that sort of stuff. It was kind of weird having to go outside to like stand there and ask the questions, but he was a really nice guy. It kind of totally made sense.
Yeah.
And if you watch the other video, you'll know that that guy actually went out of his way and gave us his home address so we could go and collect the keys from his wife while he was in a different town. So yeah, that was He was a good guy. The estate agents that we used was Purple Bricks, so all of their interactions are online anyway, as standard. So there wasn't really anything different for us in terms of lockdown versus no lockdown. Obviously, if you're with a different estate agents, they're going to have a different way of dealing with lockdown.
So although the estate agents was the exact same for us personally, there were other people involved, and one of those was the mortgage broker. So we decided to go with a mortgage broker. So I don't know if things would be different if you went directly to a bank, but with the mortgage broker there were no in-person meetings. Once we'd put our offer in, we were designated to one person in the company that was our specific mortgage broker, and that initial proper meeting with them would normally be done in person, but it was done on the phone, and then later on a small video chat just to confirm that we were who we were saying we were against our IDs. It was really good, honestly. Like, I personally didn't have a problem with it being like that. We got all of our questions answered, you know, it was all perfectly fine. I think they were kind of a bit stumbly. You could tell it was just as things were starting to happen, so it was obviously very new for them, and you could tell they were kind of getting used to it, but it didn't matter. Like, you got the exact same thing, you just didn't actually see them, you were just in a different place. And yeah, after that initial meeting, all of our correspondence for the next 3 months was just over the phone, and it was pretty simple.
Yeah, it was the same with the solicitor. So I instructed a solicitor and used their services for the whole thing, right through until completion, without ever actually meeting them face to face. So I could walk past my solicitor on the street right now and I probably wouldn't even recognise her because I never met her face to face. The only sort of weird thing was that I had to take a selfie. I had to take a photo of myself with my passport next to me to send it over them to verify my ID. But yeah, other than that, it was just normal, you know, phone calls, emails, that kind of thing. By that point, I think the solicitors were pretty used to it. And I've been working from home on and off for a number of years, so doing things sort of digitally was sort of pretty normal for me. But I know some people do kind of find that a bit weird. Still, at least in the summer of 2020 they did. Obviously, people have started to get a bit more used to it now. So yeah, everything was done by phone and email. And the forms, maybe that took a little bit longer than normal because we had to have the forms emailed over, discuss them over the phone, and then sort of we had to print them out, sign them, scan them or post them, or in one case we actually drove to their office and posted it, just so we knew. So yeah, maybe that took longer than normal, but dealing with solicitors is usually a slow process anyway, so it didn't feel like it really added anything on for us.
So I think the only other difference that we were aware of when it came to the COVID related differences were the delays. Delays in every house move, I'm sure, but there were definitely some that seemed very COVID related and were the cause of the pandemic. So for instance, there were a few issues where we had to just call up and call different people and keep calling and hoping it would get sorted, whereas that would have been a thing that you could just go in to your solicitors or the estate agents or whoever it is you need to deal with, sit there, we're here, we're sorting this out, it needs to be done. So problems like that took a bit longer. Then there was also delays when it came to getting the searches done. Now these were just the standard searches that you got when you got the mortgage, and from the booking them in, like when we got the mortgage sorted, to getting the searches done, it took 2.5 weeks to actually get someone to do the searches. So the 2.5 week delay, that wasn't necessarily pandemic related, but there was a very long waiting list because of people now suddenly being able to do it.
Another thing to note regarding delays is we actually decided to not get a survey done on the property. So everything that we saw about it sort of suggested to us that it wasn't really super important for us to get that done anyway. And we called up a couple of sort of surveying companies, and we were getting sort of estimates of like 10 weeks before they'd be able to come out and actually do a survey. And at that point, it was looking like we're expected to have exchanged and completed by then. We don't want to be a big hold up. In hindsight, we could have gotten it done, and a 10-week delay wouldn't have actually really delayed the whole thing massively because of how many weeks it ended up taking. But the fact that there was that 10-week delay was sort of crazy to us. We don't know if that is normal outside of COVID. We got the impression that it wasn't.
No.
But that's just something that, again, most of the time people do opt to get a survey. So I think that's something that's really important to consider.
Yeah, if you talk to anyone about getting a house, like the process of buying a house, everyone will tell you to get a survey done, because it means you know exactly what's wrong with it and exactly what's happening. And I also just wanted to reiterate, if we felt we needed one, we would have got one. The delay wouldn't have mattered. It was simply that there was so much going on, and we already had so much information because of where the water and the gas is and the electricity is in this house. Like, we already had all that information because it goes through our property. So there's a lot of stuff that normally you would have been able to find out. And then we also had all of the building stuff because it had all been redone to sell up, and we could see everything in the house. So we felt fairly confident that we would be okay without. Obviously, normally it's recommended to get a survey done, so we were aware of the risk, but decided against it. And then also, because the rules were changing so often, and by the time it came to setting a date and getting everything sorted, we were in another national lockdown, we were actually recommended to both exchange and complete on the same day, which is not normal. Outside of this pandemic, that is not normal. There's normally a week to 2 weeks between them. But we didn't have that. It was very much recommended to us, get it done on the same day, because then the rules are going to be there. Whereas if you did it and rules changed, you could be left in limbo until rules change again. So we did exchange and complete on the same day, which wasn't a problem for us. There was no hanging around. It meant everything was done and sorted, but that could affect some people, so it is just something to be aware of. But yeah, that is everything. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it helped you out. If you did like it, please do give it a like, subscribe down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.